Hi, shalom friends. You know, I'm sure you might have seen on the back of some bottles of alcohol, it says drink responsible or be responsible while you're drinking. I think it's a good message, but not limited to drinking, basically to everything. The idea of being responsible for your actions and owning up to it. In fact, that there's a well-known story with the Rabbi who was being interviewed by a young, quite brilliant student. And when the Rabbi asked him about what's happening in his university, he said something to the effect like, being that I find myself in these circumstances, and the Rabbi interrupted him, which was uncharacteristic. And the Rabbi said, what do you mean you find yourself in these circumstances? You put yourself in these circumstances. So now that you've made the choice to be in a certain place at a certain time, so now own it and say to yourself, what can I do with it? So we don't find ourselves in circumstances in the vast majority of times. We actually make our circumstances, and then we have to tailor our response, whether it will bring us honor and dignity or the opposite. There's a well-known parable from Reb Chaim of Sanz, of blessed memory. There was once a man who was camping or in the forest and lost his bearings. And he was trying to find his way back to civilization. So he decided he thought he heard in the distance some gurgling of water. He thought that might be a creek, and that would lead him to a larger, and maybe from there he would be able to go out. So for a day and a half, he's following this imaginary voice, and indeed, he actually comes to a creek which leads nowhere. And he's really, really despondent. He is hopelessly lost. And as he's there, he hears the crashing of some bushes. He turns around, and there's another backpacker. And they see each other, and the first fellow is so happy. He said, thank God, I am lost. I'm so happy that I haven't seen anyone for a day and a half. Perhaps you could tell me the way out of the forest. And the fellow looks at him sadly. He says, you're lost? I've been lost myself for 2 days. And as soon as I saw you, I was thinking to myself, thank God someone knows the way out of the forest. And they look at each other, crestfallen, until finally one of them says, 1 second. You know, there's benefit in us, because I know the direction not to follow. You know the direction not to follow, so together we might find the right path. And it's a very, very telling story, because we just started a new Hebrew year, a new calendar year, 5,781, and we might think to ourselves, okay, how is this year going to be different? And one of the most obvious answers is, from last year we know what does not work. Or from last year we know what could be improved on. So if you look with a sense of regret on last year, this is already a sense of growth, because now you know what to do this year. It is obvious that we all make mistakes and errors of judgment, but the fool keeps repeating it. The intelligent one learns from it. So this year, without a doubt, will be much, much better for us on a mental and emotional way, because we will not repeat the silliness of last year. Let's be responsible and own up to it. But sadly, it's always easy to blame others. So they tell a joke of a CEO of a large company that's retiring, and he calls in his replacement, and he says, you know, Jack, you have a big company to run, and a lot of problems that you're going to have to solve. So with all of my experience, I've crystallized it in 3 items of advice. But I'm not going to tell it to you now because you won't appreciate it. So I actually put into the company safe 3 envelopes. If you ever get to a problem that you cannot solve, on your own, then take out the envelope and follow the order. He thanked him warmly, and for the first year and a half, things were good, and then things became not so good. And he was taking a lot of heat, and he didn't know how to get out of it. And he remembered that the former CEO had left him an envelope. So he opens up the company safe, envelope number 1, he opens it up, and it says, "Dear Jack, if things are rough, blame your predecessor." He said, "Oh, that's great." Calls a press conference, and he says, "I want to let you know we have a healthy, vibrant country, but sadly it was mismanaged by my predecessor, and I'm going to change direction." And Wall Street was happy, and the people on the street decided to give him a vote of confidence, and sure enough, the company went back to normal. Two years pass, and things again, it's at a standstill, it's not growing. And he's getting a lot of pressure from the stockholders. When is this thing going to break out? And he decides he needs another piece of advice. Takes out the second envelope, and it says, "Dear Jack, if you're in this position, announce reorganization." Brilliant. Calls a press conference. "Well, I do realize that there are certain issues that have to be done, but it's not my fault. It's the organization, but we are reorganizing. We're promoting so-and-so, and we're demoting so-and-so, and with the reorganization, without a doubt, our company will begin to soar." And sure enough, Wall Street responds very favorably, and they give him a vote of confidence, and for 6 quarters, he's going up, 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 and then suddenly it gets stuck again. In fact, no one's buying the product. He's under tremendous pressure. What should he do? So he decides, well, it's the last envelope. The first 2 helped. Takes out the last envelope and he says, "Dear Jack, if you are reading this envelope, my advice to you is to prepare 3 envelopes." And that's the joke. You see, it takes a while for us to actually decide that it's our problem. Sometimes by the time we decide that, it has gone so far that there's really very little that we could do. So the first aspect of growth is acknowledge, face it, own it. Without a doubt, that in itself will reorient you to find a solution. If it's your problem and it's of your making, then you could find a solution to your own problem. Of course, what I left out was the X factor, which is God helps in a miraculous way, in a natural way, but God will certainly assist. But don't we all know God helps those who help themselves? When we will make that attempt, without a doubt, we will have divine assistance and be very successful. So let me wish you all a very happy and a healthy, successful and productive 5,781, and may this year be the final year of Galut and the beginning of redemption. Shalom.